Garrett back here, and a couple months ago I did a video talking about 10 overlooked horror movies from the 90s. Now, it seemed like you guys really liked that one. I want to take it up a notch. I want to do a sequel to that video, but this is going to be 10 overlooked, gnarly 90s movies from the horror genre that you need to check out. All right, the first one is going to be from 1990. This one doesn't even have any kind of Blu-ray or anything. It's stuck kind of on DVD, and it's from 1990, and it's called Metamorphosis, The Alien Factor. Kind of a weird name. Feels like a very made for sci-fi type of title, but this is actually pretty damn gnarly, pretty damn cool. This is technically the sequel to Deadly Spawn, so it was by the same directors and writers of the Deadly Spawn. This was kind of their follow-up. They said it was a sequel. It could also be known as Deadly Spawn 2, but it really doesn't have much to do with that first movie. I'm surprised this doesn't get more love than what it does, but it's basically about this like research lab, and they find this serum that they're putting on different animals and stuff to kind of create like almost like these mutated animals. Well, one guy ends up getting infected there, and he starts kind of going through a lot of changes. A metamorphosis, you should say, and things are flying everywhere. They have these things that almost look like face huggers, which you know I absolutely hate, but they almost look like little mouths with like one of those tongues or whatever that was going in your throat. I don't know, but it is really, really cool. I mean, like I said, the practical effects here are just what you would see in 80s movies. So that's what really drew me to this. I just think it's really overlooked, and it's pretty damn bonkers. Now, speaking of bonkers, the next one we're going to talk about is a movie that came out in 1995, and it's a Stephen King adaptation. I love Stephen King adaptations. This one was directed by Tobe Hooper. Now, when it comes to Stephen King, this is one that never really gets talked about, but it's pretty damn cool, guys. This is The Mangler. Check this out. This is the Blu-ray right here from Scream Factory, The Mangler. This has Robert Englund in here. I mean, this is one that maybe you've seen on the shelves before throughout the years, but just kind of passed it by because you're like, Robert Englund doing something outside of Freddy. I don't think I'm interested. This is a pretty damn cool movie, and it did spawn some sequels that does star Robert Englund as well, so you could tell he really liked to do this character here, but this is kind of the 90s version of Christine, I would say. So Stephen King obviously is the one responsible for Christine. It's about the car that's possessed, that's killing people. Well, we kind of take it up a notch here. I don't even know if I would say up a notch, but I would say we make it a little more gnarly here, a little bit more different. You get a possessed laundry press. Yeah, a laundry press. So basically this takes place in like a laundry factory, and super odd, like someone gets cut and their blood like goes on this machine, and this machine comes possessed. And then there's another machine that comes possessed. It's like an ice machine or something like that. And you're going to say, hey, wait a minute. Is this kind of like Maximum Overdrive? No, not really. But this laundry press is pissed, and this thing is evil. Now, just by me talking about it, it makes it seem like, why are you recommending this to people? But guys, this is a pretty damn cool movie. Like I said, Robert Englund plays a real neat character here. He kind of owns the laundry service here. But then you have Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, Ted Levine, and he plays like the cop, and he's trying to solve the case. It's really cool, and like I said, this thing is a possessed laundry press, and this movie is pretty damn gory, guys. There's a lot of blood here. There's some suspense, there's tense moments in here, and I feel like this thing is super overlooked. It's never talked about when it comes to even Stephen King adaptations. Now, as weird as it is, I think The Mangler is one that you guys are going to really appreciate if you haven't seen it. All right, this one is from 1995, and I'm going to do a little bit more of a deep dive on this, only because this just came out in a beautiful edition from TerraVision, and I haven't done any kind of unboxing or anything yet, but I do want to talk about this release. This is the release for Rumplestiltskin, a movie, a 90s movie that is so overlooked until recently, I feel like. This movie hasn't been talked about in a real long time. It was out around the time that like Leprechaun was really big. So this was really trying to take, advantage of that success with this movie. And watching this now and seeing what TerraVision did to this movie, I'm like, man, this is so much better than I ever remember. The transfer here looks fantastic. This movie is fun as hell. I mean, you know the Rumpelstiltskin character from the fairy tales back in the day, but this movie basically brings him into Los Angeles, into modern time. through a stone, and he gets let free. And, you know, he's after babies, and that's kind of his gimmick here. But he's cool. I mean, he's on a motorcycle. He's wearing sunglasses. He's got a wittiness to him. This edition also has an amazing making of documentary. It's got so much stuff in here that I never thought would get the light of day for something like Rumplestiltskin. And Rumplestiltskin was a movie where the DVD was very out of print. I sold that DVD years and years ago, thinking that after I saw what Vinegar Syndrome was putting out, I'm like, they're going to probably do Rumpelstiltskin. I'm going to sell this DVD for big money. And I did. And I finally have it back in my collection. And this edition is, in my opinion, probably the best edition so far this year of anything that I've gotten. So I do recommend you guys get this, because this thing got more love than it's ever going to get. Not only that, you do get, you know, it's got the extra slipcover in here. You've got the 4K there with the original poster art. Like I said, it's chocked full of special features. You get a poster. You get a book. I mean, you get a postcard in here as well. Look at him. Look at Rump. And I think this edition is just amazing. I mean, the artwork, the way it pops, the movie itself, it's got essays about the movie. I did get the bundle, but not the huge bundle. Like, I didn't get t-shirts or anything, but I did get other things. And my only complaint about this edition is that some of the extra stuff they gave you, like the second book of essays, like, there's nowhere to put it. Like, you can't really fit it in here, I don't think. No, you can't. So and this is only the second bundle. So if you got more stuff on the other bundle, like, you've got more stuff that you have nowhere to put. So I do kind of wish that this would have housed a lot of these other books and stuff like that as well, because now I need to have like a Rumpelstiltskin drawer to put all my goodies and stuff in there. But again, that's a minor gripe about this, but this edition right here is something that I highly recommend. And I think this is probably the standard edition, I guess, or unless you're only going to get this in the standard, I'm not sure exactly, but I would hunt this thing down. Rumpelstiltskin is a movie that I feel like is getting a lot more love now, and I think it's really deserved, and it's cool to see more people are kind of coming out and finding this for the first time. So I wanted to add this on my list just in case you guys weren't on the Rumpelstiltskin train right now and you want to jump on it because of this video. All right, now speaking of fairy tales, I'm going to bring this one to the table too. This is another 90s movie, came out in 96, that I always said if someone did Rumpelstiltskin, they need to do this as well in a similar edition. And that is Pinocchio's Revenge. Now, this thing is still stuck on DVD. This is one of those movies that I think is long overdue for edition, like we got with Rumpelstiltskin. This is a pretty interesting one, and we're seeing now a lot of these, like, Disney characters coming out in horror movies. Like, you got that Tollbooth Willie, you've got Winnie the Pooh, like all these people. This was an OG one. They did a Snow White one as well back in the day with Sigourney Weaver, but this is a cool one. This is basically Pinocchio as a slasher, but it's a fun-ass movie. I mean, this basically is about a little wooden boy that was the toy of a kid who was murdered, and this toy kind of comes to life similar to what Pinocchio does, and he ends up going to this new family and kind of, you know, attacking them and whatnot. It's a real cool-ass movie. It was directed by Kevin Tenney, and I think this is one that not many people talk about, probably don't even know, because it's been stuck on DVD for a long time. Pinocchio's Revenge is one that I highly recommend. It's gnarly, it's bonkers, it's weird, but it's super fun, and it screams 90s. The thing about 90s, especially as we progress into the decade, is that we start to fade out of the 80s. You start seeing them try new things. The 90s horror, to me, kind of has a little bit of almost like it could have been a lot of made for TV, made for VHS type horror movies. And there's kind of a real coziness to it. And I don't know if it had to do with the age that I was when these came out, but 90s horror I'm really getting into just because of the way that they are. They're starting to toy with a little bit of CGI. It's not really there yet, but super fun. This is a real cool one, like I said, from 96 that I think you guys need to check out. Now, speaking of out-of-print movies, this one is one I think out of this whole list is probably the least overlooked out of all of them. Being a horror fan, you probably are aware of this movie, but because it hasn't been available for so long, there could be some watching this that said, you know what, I've never seen this movie. I've heard about it, but I've never seen it. But Man, this is going to be Dead Alive, aka Brain Dead from 1992. Now, if you want to talk about 90s gnarly movies, this could be the top dog. This thing, when I saw it for the first time, was absolutely amazing. What an experience to see this for the first time. So if anybody out there hasn't seen this, I cannot wait for you guys to finally get to see it, because I do believe that this will be something that'll be coming out on physical media very, very soon. This was a Peter Jackson movie. It's got a lot of comedic elements to it, but it's done so well. It's about zombies, and man, it's from New Zealand, and it's just fun as hell. Like I said, it's a gory bloodbath. It's a zombie comedy. It's a splatter film. It could be body horror-esque as well. But man, Dead Alive, aka Brain Dead, is one you guys definitely have to see. It is super fun, super gnarly, bonkers, and it's basically about this like crazy little monkey that bites this woman, and it kind of starts the trend of these people becoming infected and becoming zombies. It's got the main character, Lionel, and his mom comes to the house, and she's a great character, and she says to him, "Your place is infested with vermin." And I've had her stuck in my head ever since. There's a lot of grotesque scenes when she first gets bitten at the dinner table or at the breakfast table that you guys are gonna absolutely love. But I don't know where to find this. I know this is hard to find. Is it streaming? I have no idea. But like I said, hold up. I do think we're gonna get this very, very soon. We have to. It's one of the most wanted horror movies of the 90s that is still kind of lost on physical media. It's another one where I did have the Blu-ray and I sold for the same reasons I sold Rumplestiltskin, is I'm like, this will be out soon. I can get good money for this. And luckily I still had the DVD. But man, Dead Alive is one that, again, is probably the most well-known one on my list to most fans. But because of the scarcity of this release, I'm not sure everybody has seen it. Now, speaking of a movie no one's ever seen, and no one's ever seen this because it's still stuck on VHS, and this is a movie from 1994, The Unborn 2. So if you know the movie The Unborn from the 80s, this is The Unborn 2, the sequel. And why is this on the list? Because this is freaking gnarly as hell. This is bonkers as hell. It's about mutant babies and this woman that goes crazy and starts killing babies. And then this one baby that she finds is actually the mutant, and he's got this weird deformed head, and it's freaky looking, and it starts like biting people and killing people. This thing is a wild ride. It's got Scott Valentine in this. I don't know where to find this, to be honest. I haven't watched this in many, many years because I only own it on VHS. I don't think it's even streaming. So I hope somebody gets this and puts this out, because it screams 90s, but it's freaking bonkers and gnarly. And I want to talk about it because it is so overlooked, because it's so hard to come by. So Unborn 2, if you didn't know there was a sequel, you know now. All right, so if you want to talk about a well-known horror director, we're going to talk about William Friedkin. Now, William Friedkin was known for directing The Exorcist, writing The Exorcist, and man, he is a genius in my opinion. He just really knows what he's talking about, and he got back into horror in 1990. This is technically his first horror film back from The Exorcist, and this was a movie that was supposed to also be directed by Sam Raimi, but Sam Raimi had to kind of drop out. He ended up doing Darkman, and that is a movie called The Guardian. Now, this was a very long, out-of-print DVD back in the day. I remember this was one that a lot of people were after, and I remember for a long period of time, I was like, I need to find The Guardian. It was by the guy who did Exorcist. I need to see this thing. And to get that DVD was a pain in the ass. It was an Anchor Bay one. But since then, I did get the DVD. I have the VHS, and I also have the Blu-ray, which is by Scream Factory, which I think you can still get now. This one I always found really cool. It's very, very different. It's basically about this woman who gets hired as a nanny to take care of these kids. But this woman seems a little bit off. Now, what's so wild about this, like I said, is this woman is hired to be a nanny. And she ends up kidnapping these kids and bringing them into the woods to this big, huge tree where she's going to use them as a sacrifice hat. She's done with a lot of other kids because she's almost like attracted to this tree, some kind of like tree nymphomaniac. And this woman is absolutely bonkers in this. The effects are really, really cool. It's a real cool movie, and they come to find out like this woman has changed her name in the past, has kidnapped kids in the past, being sacrificed to this tree. The guy even has a chainsaw, and he uses it to cut the tree, which is, again, it's one of those things where usually a chainsaw you see cutting people in horror movies. This, he actually does cut that tree with the chainsaw, and there is blood that's squirting out everywhere, so there is some gore here. You do get a little wild practical effects as well. But guys, The Guardian, I think, is one that I've always really liked. I know, like I said, a lot of people might be like, I didn't like that one because maybe they compared it to The Exorcist or any of his other movies that he did. But guys, you're going to think of what horror was in the 90s. This was based off a book. But I do think The Guardian is so wacky, wild, and bonkers that you guys have to check it out. Next one is from 1990. It's a French film. This could have easily been on one of my lists for disturbing movies, most disturbing movies. I actually do like this one. This is one that I do enjoy. It's super, super weird. It's called Baby Blood. This is the Anchor Bay release. I do know this has other releases out there. I think it's got a Blu-ray from Kino. This is the only version that I own. I probably will upgrade this in the future. But it's basically about this girl. She's like a circus performer. She's part of she's like a carny basically. And she ends up getting impregnated by like this parasite. And she's walking around pregnant. And this parasite needs blood. So she ends up like sleeping with a lot of these strange men and then killing them for the parasite. She tries to even kill herself a bunch of the times because this thing is just controlling her. But it is a wild, wacky film. The practical effects in here are crazy. I mean, this thing is pretty damn bonkers. You know how the French do it. They are pretty damn bonkers with their movies. So I wanted to add this one to the list because I don't ever really hear many people talking about Baby Blood from 1990. All right, now the next one I want to talk about is another one that's been lost for a real long time on physical media. This edition, I think, is still out there. It's actually from Germany. It's a region-free. But man, I've been after this movie ever since VHS. I rented this back in the day and I absolutely loved it. Being such a huge fan of Reanimator and Jeffrey Combs and being a big fan of Brian Usna, when I knew that they were involved in this, I wanted to check it out. And that is Necronomicon. Like I said, this is from 1993, but it's a horror anthology and it's freaking wild. It's based off H.P. Lovecraft stories. And man, it is really, really cool. You got about 3 stories in here. Jeffrey Combs is one of the stars in this. But what I like about this movie is the practical effects are so cool. And if you like things like From Beyond and Reanimator and a lot of what Usna does, you're going to really dig Necronomicon. Now, where can you watch this right now? I'm not really sure. I would probably try to stream it. This came out from Wicked Vision Films. It's from Germany. It's region free. I don't know if you can still get this thing. It's a Blu-ray. But man, I love this movie so much. And it took me a long time to actually acquire it. Like I said, I did rent it back on VHS for a long time. And I didn't have it in my collection until I found this edition a couple years ago. So Necronomicon is definitely one I wanted to add to the list because I wanted you guys to kind of learn about this in case it's been overlooked for you all these years. All right, now this last one I'm going to talk about, it was from 1999. And this was one that totally passed me by. In 1999, like I was going to the movie theaters on a weekly basis, especially to see horror movies. I remember the poster art for this. It had a real 90s look. But I hadn't seen this until a couple of years ago when Vinegar Syndrome put out a beautiful edition of this movie. And I had to get it because I'm actually a big fan of David Cronenberg. So the fact that I had never seen this movie really kind of bogged my mind. But when I watched it, I was like, holy shit, this was awesome. This was bonkers. It was gnarly. It was off the wall. And I'm talking about eXistenZ, which, look at this edition. This edition is off the wall here with this hairy stomach here. And then you flip it around and you've got that there. And man, I was really, really kind of blown away by this. This was one of my favorite editions of that year because I was just astounded that I had never seen this movie and how much I really liked it. And being a such big fan of Jennifer Jason Leigh, like that was also a big win for me when it came to this movie. And I'm like, how did I miss this? I have no idea how I missed this thing, but eXistenZ is really cool. She's like a game designer, but they utilize these games. It's like this controller's made of flesh, and there's like flesh and bone guns, and they get kind of sucked into this like video game. It's wild. If you think how Cronenberg works, it's just all over the map with how wacky and wild this thing gets. It's almost even hard to explain. It's so wild. But if you like video games, you like David Cronenberg, you like 90s, you're going to definitely like this. It's got an all-star cast: William Dafoe, Jude Law, Jennifer Jason Leigh. Like, there's so many people in this. But on Rotten Tomatoes, it does have a 75%. But it's one of those kind of body horror films. It's gross out, but it's definitely one that you guys need to add to your list. Guys, that was 10 overlooked gnarly ass 90s horror movies that I think you guys need to check out. Again, it starts all the way from things that were made in the 90s and the tail end of the 80s, and went all the way up to 1999. Like, these are all rad recommendations for me. I can do a lot more of these videos. If you like talking about some of these, if you'd like to discover some of these movies, it doesn't even have to be from the 90s. It could be from the 80s, 90s, 70s, 2000s. Should definitely keep your eyes out for. Let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do that for you and keep this thing going. But let me know also, which one of these have you guys seen? Which one have you never seen? And which one of these are favorites of yours, or maybe you don't like at all? I'm curious to see what you guys think of the 10 that I showcased today. And speaking of 90s horror, if you love 90s horror, In Search of Darkness just came out with this brand new documentary talking about the movies from 1990 to 1994. And man, this is almost like an encyclopedia for 90s horror. And guys, if you haven't checked that out, I really do dig their stuff, because when it comes to movies, especially horror, I'm all about discovery. And this really helps me, do these kind of videos, because when I'm watching this, I'm like, oh man, I haven't seen that movie in so long. It looks great. I forgot how cool that looks. Or, oh, I've never seen that one. Let me hunt it down. And I really just like that about those movies. And that's what I really like about doing these videos as well, is to try to get you guys to check out something that maybe you've never heard of that I really dig. So guys, thank you again for checking this one out. This is Garrett at Born2beRad, and like always, stay rad.